It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again, time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 267. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hi.
Appropriately placed Grace.
Appropriate hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hello.
So, last week we had our second part of the Shadowbringers show, and there were some stuff that happened that we would have potentially have talked about were we not doing a two-part show. The first of which is we had some folks go to Pax West. What happened
that
at
happened
Pax West?
Since the last show.
Well, it did, I guess. Yeah, maybe, sure.
Happened in
The weekend of the last show.
Yeah, PAX was fun.
As usual, the highlight for me was a variety of indie games.
There were some indie games. There were some board games. and I can tell you with my words that there was gameplay of Final Fantasy VII happening. I can't give you any proof of this because they explicitly told us we couldn't take any.
They did have a really, really cool, what's the word I'm looking for? Like setup. Their booth there was very neat. I mean, you have to be very into FF7, which I am, to appreciate it because it's lots and lots of really tiny details, but I was here for it. The entire booth was themed around a Shinra product showcase at a train station.
That's pretty great.
And so the whole thing is set up in that Final Fantasy VII train station brickwork. They had massive screens on the side, like just massive screens set up that were just showing like train schedules, like Midgard train schedules. There were Loveless posters, like multiple different types of Loveless poster. It was cool. I was here for it. I was not here for showing up at 7 a.m. to try to wait in line to play it, but
yeah, like it was. They were doing a ticketed line entry, and it was a long line. So I was not up for that, but it looked cool. They did say they did have all these signs saying, "Please don't take any pictures or video of anybody playing Final Fantasy VII."
Yet I saw pictures and video of people playing Final Fantasy VII.
Listen, F the pose.
Science can only do so much, really.
It's true. And in fairness, that's like a common Tokyo Game Show thing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, like it's considered kind of rude to take pictures of people like eating or, anytime that people are just doing stuff, it's sort of considered rude to take pictures. So like I'm not super surprised. And I think that's one of the only times Square has had a booth.
They always have a booth. I mean, it's the first time I think they've had a booth for one game.
Yeah.
Because they always have a booth.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they always have a booth. It's the only time I've seen a booth that is like a showcase versus, hey, come up and play some random stuff.
Yeah.
Usually their booth has a large section for FF14 and then some other stuff.
Yeah.
And this time they had that, and then they had also just across the aisle this big giant FF7 thing.
We didn't do the FF14 raid this time.
It looked pretty like a long line.
It was a long line, and people were mostly losing.
Which one was it this time?
Titania, yeah.
I had some friends that did the Titania fight. They got in. They won. They were happy. They got their cool shirts.
Yeah, the shirts are cool. I do like their shirts.
Any specific game highlights from the indie side?
So, I know I'm pretty excited about Superliminal. It is a first-person puzzle game where perspective doesn't work quite right. So, like, if you put something big far away, it becomes small. If you bring something small very close up, it becomes big.
Yeah, it's basically a video game about forced perspective.
Wasn't Antechamber that?
Not really, but kind of.
Non.
It is very Antechamber inspired.
Yes, which is why I was excited.
To the point where the devs were like kind of exhausted by people making the comparison.
Well,
Yep.
Don't make a spiritual successor if you don't want to be compared to the original game.
Well, I mean, it was clear that the devs had never played Antichamber.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, they had never played Antichamber. This game was not at all inspired by Antichamber, but everybody was comparing it to them. So I can understand them being like...
that happens sometimes. In weird games I liked, the game that I just found out came out on Friday, Creature in the Well, which is a pinball-inspired dungeon crawler type game.
How do you make a pinball-inspired dungeon crawler type game?
You know how in Legend of Zelda, when something shoots magic at you, you can use your sword to shoot it back?
What if that's your primary weapon?
So you can reflect that back to take things out, I guess.
Yes.
And what if there were so many spells on the screen?
To where it's almost bullet helly at times?
It's definitely bullet helly at times. But also you have like an energy sword that can manipulate these things and hold them in front of you so you can pause for a bit to figure out where to shoot them. So you aren't entirely relying on your angle skills.
Oh, that's good. I didn't see that in the trailer, probably because it would have taken away from the action. But the trailer was like, I am never going to have any control over any of this, am I?
I played a demo of this one because I was curious. It is less unmanageable than the trailer makes it look.
Well, that's good.
There is, however, a boss fight in that demo, and the boss fight is definitely a thing. But yeah, this just launched on Steam and Switch.
Switch has rapidly become my platform of choice for quirky indie games.
Speaking of quirky indie games, you know what we got to find out has a release date?
What?
An Untitled Goose Game. It's coming out in September.
Honk!
Yep. It will be out September 20th.
This PAX really made a thing apparent to me, which I've been sort of suspecting. I am not the target audience for like lots of low budget indies. I just don't have the time. Because there were a bunch that looked interesting, and I was like, yeah. There's a few like real standouts that I'm excited about, like Untitled Goose Game, but
the thing that I've kind of noticed is like indie games are so prolific at this point that if you really want to be up on indie games, you kind of have to play indie games to the exclusion of other things.
Yeah.
Unless you're just wanting to pick up the occasional game that like crosses your path, because there's so many of them. I mean, because there for a while it was like there were specific games that everybody had kind of played, like Braid and things like that. But there's so many more, just so many more games than there ever were.
I think we have more indie games, but that doesn't mean... I feel like there are still some high-quality indie games akin to Braid that still break through the surface. I just think there's more of an audience for a lot more of the niche players that probably would not have found an audience before.
Yeah.
But like, Return of the Obra Dinn was a tiny little indie game and still, I mean, had blown up to pretty broad appeal.
Yeah.
Well, and that's sort of one of the games that got me thinking about it, is because I didn't actually like it. I know I'm supposed to be like, oh, this game was amazing and inspired and everything was fantastic about it, but like, I didn't enjoy it.
Aww.
Like, I realized that was a last year game, but like, I probably would put it on Games of the Year for this year if I could.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it coming out for the Switch? Is it coming out this year for the Switch?
There you go. We could just have it repeat.
All right.
And like, I don't know if I'm just broken or what, but
People have different tastes.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is like an indie game almost has to blow up like that for me to really put it on my radar, unless it just happens to be in a niche that I love.
yeah, and like the niche that I generally love has been like interesting, quirky narrative games. Like, I really loved Emily is Away, for example. But like, even that, there's just so many of them, I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Like, there's a game that's I don't know if it's out yet or if it's about to come out, that I'm kind of excited about, is River City Girls, which is a spiritual successor to River City Ransom. And I loved River City Ransom, but I would love to play it with higher fidelity. And that's kind of what this game is going to give. So, an actual, like, manga-style narratives. But, I mean, like, that's a niche that I'm really interested in. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even known about it. Any other standouts from PAX?
So I played Norman's Night In for a little bit, and that was very cute and funny. So Norman is the titular character, is this old guy who mostly just stands still. You are a bowling ball, and you are using a touchscreen to thrust this bowling ball into Norman to propel him over cliffs and obstacles.
This game looked hilarious. Like, I don't know if I want to play it, but it looked hilarious. It's also one of the only games I have seen that is, like, optimized on tablet.
Yes, I would definitely say play this on something with a touchscreen.
It was okay with a controller, but yeah, touchscreen. Go for it.
That was actually sort of my takeaway from PAX was industry trends are interesting.
Why is that?
Spring Falls was also very clearly a touchscreen game that they happened to hook up a controller to for the show. That was the one about watering plants.
Ooh, that looked fun too.
So the thing that stood out to me was there was a whole lot more mobile game representation going on than I've seen at any PAX previously. And they are really trying to make VR happen.
One of my standouts from last year was a mobile game.
Are they actually succeeding this time?
No.
They've been trying to make VR happen for a while.
A lot of money has gone into making VR happen this time. So we get some things that, quote unquote, everyone knows about, like Beat Saber.
I mean, Beat Saber looks pretty cool, I have to admit.
Beat Saber is really fun.
Yeah, I didn't really play any of the VR games. They look interesting. But yeah, I was definitely more interested in a lot of the tablet games.
I'm really interested to see more tablet/mobile games that aren't just gacha games.
It would be nice if Summoner's Fate would actually release, since that was one of the games that I picked up last year as, this looks really cool, and I'd like to for it to actually come out. But a year later, still not out.
I feel the same way with Get in the Car Loser.
Yeah.
I want that game to come out. It looks like a lot of fun.
That's a game that I'm really happy exists, and I'm not sure I have a terrible interest in playing it.
That doesn't seem like a game for me.
Frog Detective looks like it's got a quirky sense of humor that is my type of humor. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that one.
There's a little bit of what qualifies as indie. Like, is Larian indie? Do they count?
I mean, sort of, but I don't know. The line is real blurry right now.
Yeah, which I think is contributing to my take, is that, like, it's a really blurry line.
Because it doesn't feel like we're as clear in the territory of these two people made a game and they pushed it all the way to market. Like, they were very clearly an indie. These are just, like, a lot of times it's small studios. And then they're going to publish the game in whatever means they can figure out to publish the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's because there's the AAA doesn't mean anything anymore. Like, once upon a time, these would not be indie studios. They would be, like, A studios or B studios or AA studios, maybe.
Well, like, basically we're in this world where we have small studios and megacorps. And there's not much of a line. Like, there's not a bunch of wiggle room between those. Either like a giant conglomeration or you're a small studio.
There's a very small amount of these 2, 3, 4 people made a game. But those are kind of going away.
I mean, I guess I would say Supergiant is definitely one of those weird spots. Like, yeah, what does it count like when you have like an official studio name and there's a staff? Like, where does Team Cherry versus Supergiant fit on those continuums?
It's unclear.
Yeah.
But Valerian has a game coming out that looks kind of interesting, which is a sequel to Divinity Original Sin 2, with less of the exploration and more of just FF Tactics style, go from battle to battle.
Oh, so they're doing it again where they're changing genres?
It's less of a change than before, but yes, it's another game in a slightly different genre than their previous games, which is apparently the thing they always do.
Yeah.
And I played 2 different games strongly inspired by the D&D 5 rule set. One of them is using it completely, OGL and everything.
Sorry, what games?
Games inspired by D&D 5.
I'm curious.
Solasta, Crown of the Magister was the less interesting looking of these, but it is using the D&D 5 rule set verbatim. I think it's on Kickstarter like now. And the other one is Project Witchstone from Spearhead, who also made Stories and Omensight. So this is a new genre for them. They are not going with a grid-based game, but they are definitely using D&D inspired rules, complete with like fighters with superiority dice.
And it seems like they've learned to have a less confusing name.
This is temporary, so we'll see. Omensight was perfectly fine. Just Stories was should have had a better name.
Yeah.
So, another thing that happened this week is we had a Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
Did we have more PAX news?
We did have a couple of other things at PAX. I kind of want to talk about the board game that we did.
The one we liked, or the one that you're never going to play again?
I liked both of those games. So
I bought the other one.
yeah, Cartographer is really cool, and it's a theme of board games. I've now played 3 of these.
It's one of my favorite board game themes.
Yeah. I've now seen 2. I've played 2 of them. I've seen 3, where basically everyone has a sheet of paper, and then they are trying to creatively draw, they are trying to place shapes onto their drawing area to score points. And so everyone's like, you have to draw this shape on your board, and can you draw it effectively, or figure out what's the right way to draw it? It's really fun and engaging.
I like it because it blends. It is a creative game with mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
and I like creative games a lot more than other kinds of games. I like games where creativity matters. It's not just optimizing numbers, but I also like totally unbounded creativity is fun, but also kind of gets a little old.
I mean, it always depends on how is this unbounded creativity getting judged, right?
Yeah.
Like, there has to be a mechanic that processes that unbounded creativity. It's why I like games like Codename so much, because there is a huge amount of creative space to work there, but you still are not having, what does one player judge to be the most creative? Because I tend to not like those games.
So you don't like the party game genre?
I tend to... I like it in a very limited application. Those games tend to not have rules for them ending, though, which is definitely a problem if I like it in limited doses. Because I find nobody knows when to say, okay, we should stop playing this, and those games tend to go on too long.
The irony, of course, is that I love those games and could play them forever.
Like Snake Oil or whatever that one's called.
Snake Oil is great. Fiasco is great. Almost any of the, we're going to give you a random set of cards, justify their existence in some interesting way.
I strongly dislike having to do that sort of thing.
I know.
Very strongly.
I know. It's why we never play them, or very rarely play them. But I do love them dearly and never get to play them.
Those are honestly the board game styles that I tend to gravitate towards, are the party game style.
On the complete opposite end, we have Pipeline.
Pipeline is a game that suckers you in with a very cool pipe-building mechanic and then reveals that it's a brutal economy game. Which is exactly how it got us to the table, right, Ash?
Huh?
And there's definitely an element where you are taking these pipes and fitting them together to form, longer and longer pipelines. But the whole idea is that you're buying crude oil and then refining it into higher and higher grade versions of itself, and the game does not give you very many resources to get started with this. It gives you barely enough if you play super optimally to get off of the ground and start making money. If you don't do this, you're probably going to have to go into debt. And debt in this game is, very bad.
That sounds like the opposite of a game I want to play.
Oh, yes.
So it is
that sounds
absolutely the opposite of a game you would want to play.
That sounds like a miserable experience.
It was okay once we learned it, but the 2 people we were playing with did not get off to good starts.
Yep.
And we stopped halfway through.
We stopped a third of the way through.
Yes.
They're like, okay, I see how this game played. I also recognize I'm now in a hole that I am not going to successfully dig myself out of. I think we can be done here. And they were like, yep, that sounds
we can
right.
be done here. Like, I could maybe play this game again, but it would have to be, I don't know what it would have to be. I'd have to definitely be in a very particular mood to want to play this game.
Yeah. I don't, like, so...
This one's a bit much.
I don't even think this is a particularly good version of this style of game. It is one of those games I recognize that I don't have an audience for this game. I should probably just be happy that I got to play it once.
Like my ideal game is somewhere in between the Unbounded Creativity games and this game. This was a bit much.
We also did a cool thing. I got to take Ash and Tam to True Dungeon for their first time.
That was fun.
True Dungeon was really cool.
It is basically a heavily fantasy themed escape room, and as such,
that makes sense.
with persistent loot.
With persistent loot and like a character sheet and rules for adjudicating combats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how many escape rooms you've done.
I actually do. Other escape rooms have
yes.
combat in them.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I had no idea. This is the only... I've done a couple of escape rooms. This is the only one that I have ever seen that has combat in it.
I did one where they give everybody a Nerf gun.
Okay.
You have a Nerf gun and 6 darts. Use them wisely.
I have done stuff like that as well. Well, I've actually done one with airsoft and with Nerf guns before.
But yeah, it was really neat. Like, the production values are crazy high. It's run really, really well. Like, I was pretty impressed. We had quite a few good laughs at the expense of the teenagers who were running alongside.
Yeah.
They were, it was very funny how cool they wanted to look.
Yes.
And how cool they definitely weren't going to look no matter what they did.
Correct.
But yeah, I can see this being a thing that you'd want to do like a whole bunch over and over again, because you get loot, and then you could use the loot to get better loot. And then when you get enough loot, you can up the difficulty on yourself and get even better loot.
Yup, it is
A real life MMO.
I mean, a little.
More like Destiny.
Yeah.
You get your friends together and go do a strike, get stuff to do another strike.
And there are people who get to talk about the legendary stories they've done. Like, we met one of the GMs in the last room was telling me about how he was part of one of the turkey leg runs this year, in which everyone gears up to the nines, except they don't use any weapons, they just use turkey legs. And try and beat everything on the hardest difficulty. So, that's cool, that's fun. I can't imagine trying to do that. But hey, maybe if I get enough gear, one day I will be.
It seems like the sort of thing that would be really fun if you went to a lot of conventions.
We've been going to Gen Con for a while, so yep, it's definitely like a yearly thing we do at Gen Con. And it's exciting to see them branching out. So they are going to be running 3 adventures at PAX South. They only ran 1 adventure at PAX West. This was their first time here. They're going to be expanding to 3 at PAX South. They do, I think, they do 4 or 5 or 6 at Gen Con and Origins. So they're definitely growing.
Anything else from PAX West?
I don't think so.
The only other thing was the FF14 panel, which was really, really cool and really heartwarming.
That was so cool.
Like, I love watching devs show off their tricks and seeing I can't remember her name.
Ishikawa.
Seeing Ishikawa just go to pieces over the entire standing ovation was so great.
I mean, I think all of us really the work she did was amazing. And so when everyone saw, oh, you were the one who did this crazy awesome thing that we just played, yes, we're going to recognize that.
The entire panel is on Twitch, but massive spoilers.
Yes, lots of spoilers.
But probably if you listen to the last 2 shows, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So, Nintendo Direct. Thoughts?
It was weird that Creature in the Well was on it.
There's been super mixed reactions to Terry Bogard going to Smash Brothers.
I mean, the mixed reactions are, yes, and who?
Who the hell is this guy?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm in the Who camp.
Oh man, I'm so sad.
Man. Fatal Fury.
Fatal Fury was a long time ago. 1991 was a long time ago.
Sigh.
I know this is true. I don't want it to be.
I'm with you.
Anyway, he's been in stuff since then.
True. Been in King of Fighters and Guru Mark of the Wolves. Speaking of which, I hope his Guru Mark of the Wolves outfit is an alternate costume for him.
Yeah. I think it's just interesting to see an SNK character in Super Smash Bros. For something that started out originally as a Nintendo fighter, it has been interesting to watch it branch out into other franchises.
Yeah, it's kind of taken over from Tekken as the game that random characters show up in.
I don't know about taking over, because I think Terry or one of the other SNK people is in Tekken as well. And Noctis is in Tekken.
That's true.
Tekken has a whole bunch of random characters in it, still.
Well, and the Mortal Kombat packs are also adding a bunch of random characters there, too. So I think this is just a fighting game thing.
The other thing from the Nintendo Direct is that some companies are publishing games on the Switch. Apparently this is a thing that you're allowed to do. It took Capcom a while to get this message, but they seem to have gotten it now. Unfortunately, they got it with Devil May Cry 2, so who knows?
I'm interested to see the Wii Xenoblade game getting a re-release.
Yeah, some things are escaping. This is going to be the third version of that game. It's clear that this time it's not just a re-release, they're remaking it on the Xenoblade 2 engine, which is good because the original game looks real bad. I recognize that it was on the Wii and it was doing the best it could, but it didn't look any better on the 3DS. Hopefully this version of the game that looks reasonable can do a little better.
Yeah, so far it looks really nice, the little teaser they gave us.
Super happy to see Super Nintendo games coming as part of the Nintendo Switch subscription.
I might actually care about those games now.
It had been rumored for a really long time, but I'm happy to see that it's actually happening, and it was a really good mix of titles for the start.
I mean, did you really need another platform to play Super Metroid on?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Well, not Super Mario World, but yes.
and the best Legend of Zelda.
I replay games.
I don't think I agree with you because I like Link Between Worlds an awful lot.
I mean, I also like Link to the Past.
Link to the Past is also very good.
I would have been really happy if they had put Star Fox 2 on this list.
Then there would be literally no reason to buy a SNES Mini.
They don't make them anymore.
That's fair.
Let's be totally fair. I've played Star Fox 2. Not great.
I mean, I played the ROM hack ages ago when it first got leaked, but it wasn't great. But it would have been nice to at least see that. I'm hoping that at some point they release it.
I played it in a bar in Osaka in one of the weirdest experiences of my life.
I'm happy F-Zero's on there because F-Zero is still one of my favorite games.
I do not like the SNES F-Zero.
I am Samurai Goro all the way.
Wow, you just,
the version of that
just
game that
like
is...
living dangerously, don't you?
Dude, that is my favorite character.
The version of that game that is good started on the 64.
It is good on the Super Nintendo. It wouldn't have happened on the 64 if it wasn't good on the Super Nintendo.
I mean, they made Star Fox 64. Anyways, the list is very good and clearly missing Earthbound.
I'm wondering if they're going to put together some sort of Mother collection at some point.
If they could
that'd be cool.
Give me a way to easily play Mother, all of Mother, I would be very excited.
Put out the first game on one of the virtual consoles as Earthbound Zero. They still never officially translated the third one. But hope springs eternal because Trials of Mana apparently exists now. Maybe some long untranslated games can get translated.
So the thing I thought was a really weird decision is that Town got a rename and is coming out in October. I would have thought it would have been spaced out further from Sword and Shield.
And Sword and Shield's not till November.
Which even makes it weirder.
I want you to play their first early shorter game and then by Pokemon 2. Probably this game is not going to be Pokemon length. Also, I did not know Toby Fox was scoring that game.
Toby Fox is looking like he is interested in working with Nintendo in many ways.
Toby Fox is living his best life.
He's definitely working with a lot of different Japanese devs.
I think the weirdest announcement was Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast.
The
Coming out
third
of
game in
Switch.
that series, and only the third game.
Look, nobody remembers the first 2 games in that series.
Dark
Right.
Forces was amazing.
Dark Forces was amazing.
Dark Forces 2 is a game people know about.
Dark Forces 2 was fun, but looked like crap.
People only
True
know about
facts.
Dark Forces because Dark Forces 2 has 2 in the title.
Dark Forces was amazing. Like it was like I don't know. I thought it was a better Doom.
Dark Forces
Anyway.
is great, and one of the only Star Wars games that isn't one of the very few Star Wars games that aren't garbage. Star Wars games have a worse record than Sonic games.
And I think that may have been it at the time, is like it was probably the first really good non X-Wing themed Star Wars game we've ever gotten.
That's probably fair.
I mean, Super Empire Strikes Back was pretty good.
The game that I hope the sequel makes it onto the Switch at some point, because that one I would rebuy. Jedi Academy.
Jedi Academy was also very good.
I think they said Jedi Academy was coming with full network multiplayer as a remake. Like, I was reading that somewhere, that's coming out in the future.
That was a weird announcement, and the only thing I think was weirder was Deadly Premonition 2, announced just before they also announced the Deadly Premonition 1 was coming.
I've not played either of those games, so...
Those are games that I would describe as, they don't look like they're for me.
Deadly Premonition are...
First one is frequently described as Twin Peaks the video game.
So, like, imagine Heavy Rain without David Cage.
I mean, that makes me slightly more interested, but still not very much.
I mean, it's the best analogy I could come up with.
I used to love Silent Hill games. They always kind of make me think it looks like Silent Hill, but I've heard it's not like Silent Hill at all. So one thing I have to say is I really like this trend that is happening where demos will release for the Switch that will allow you to continue your save game forward. Because I think Daemon X Machina did that just recently, and there's been some additional games that have done that recently.
Octopath is the only other game I can think of that did that, at least for the Switch.
The new Dragon Quest has that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really like that try before you buy, but also continue playing aspect. Because if you're going to do a demo, like it seems like a no-brainer to let the save continue forward. That way, I mean, there's all the reason in the world just to go ahead and buy it.
Bravely Default did a slightly different thing, but because they compressed their class progression to fit in the demo, so they just gave you some bonuses for playing instead. Other weird things. They're rescuing Tokyo Mirage Sessions from the Wii U. Overwatch is coming to the Switch because, sure. Divinity Original Sin 2 because, sure. I guess.
Return of the Oberdin.
Sure.
I will probably pick up Return of the Oberdin for the Switch just to throw more money at that studio, which is also why I own a copy of Bloodstained on every platform it's available for.
We got another trailer for Animal Crossing, which looks charming.
They appear to kind of subtly want to hint at, hey, you like Minecraft? Maybe you should try this game.
It is definitely looking very Minecrafty, which is to say there is mining and crafting.
It already had both of those things.
Yeah, I guess those aren't really I guess those aren't really what I think of when I think of those games, but yeah, I can see why they might want to show that off. There is a new costume there's a bunch of new costumes, including Sans in Smash.
Because if you go to Sakurai's house and beat him at Smash, you can put a character into Smash Brothers.
Apparently that's how it works.
And that's what Toby Fox did. I'm going to perpetuate this as much as possible.
I mean, there is a step one, which is get invited to Sakurai's house.
Yes, well, that's details.
Suspect step two, beat Sakurai at Smash, is also not an easy task.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't actually... Knowing how good game devs tend to be at their own games...
Is that not very?
Look, we're...
Depends.
Cheat codes exist for a reason.
That is... Cheat codes and debug modes do exist for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It also depends if you are what team you're on. If you're part of QE, watch out.
Yeah, no, if Sakurai were like a QA lead or a QAE, like, no, absolutely not. He would destroy you. Like, there are a lot of games where QA staff aren't allowed to participate in competitions because they'd be too good until some, like, predetermined amount of time has passed.
Anything else from Nintendo Direct?
It's weird that somebody who isn't from studio is making an Armored Core.
AKA Astral Chain?
Oh no, Astral Chain's a different thing. Daemon X Machina is basically Armored Core, but not by From Software, because From Software won't make it.
So, another thing that has been going on is we have been playing an excessive amount of 2004.
Something really dumb.
I have been playing 2 days, 12 hours, and 40 minutes of 2004.
I have played 3 days, 10 hours, and 36 minutes.
I wasn't going to play 2004, but then all of you guys did, and I realized I could do it for free. So fine, whatever. I've been playing, it's 2 days and something, I don't know.
I have been
2 days, 13 hours, 40 minutes.
I have been having an excessively good time.
It's been a lot of fun, and I've been thinking about why, and at least for me, I think it's a lot like going back and rereading a book that I really enjoyed and haven't read in a long time.
New Game Plus.
Yeah, because, I know it, and I already know what's going to happen, but I'll notice things I didn't notice before.
This basically is New Game Plus for us.
Yeah.
Because we know the game pretty well.
Well, and that's part of it too, is because we've all been to the end of this, there isn't really the rush to get to the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my big things, is I am just taking my time and doing all the quests I feel like doing because they're there, and running around doing all the dungeons, helping people out because I can, not in any hurry whatsoever to level up.
Yeah, and I know that I'm the second highest level character in the guild, but it's not because I'm burning, it's because I'm getting an opportunity to basically leverage all of the skills that I picked up playing originally in a new way. I mean, not even really a new way. I was bad at WoW when I played it originally.
Right, we were all
Somebody
bad.
finally
at
said its name.
It's so the funny thing is dungeon. I remember these being rough the first time, and so far, other than maybe one or two spots, there's not really been anything that I would consider rough in what we've been doing.
Because we know what we're doing.
Yeah, we're really good at playing these things, even though it took me a while to remember how to play this era of the game.
Yeah, well, and the thing, Kodra and I were talking about this the other day, the thing that this game is unpredictable. CC doesn't last a reliable amount of time. Your miss rates are super high. There's a lot of stuff that can suddenly go wrong that you need to react to. But we're really good at reacting to them now.
Yeah.
Whereas I've definitely been in places where whoops, this mob ran away. Or I didn't even have crippling poison up and a mob ran away and pulled 5 other mobs. Oh no, we're all dead.
Well, and the funny thing about it is we've talked about this before, but this game is a story engine. Everything you do out in the world generates stories. And I am going to tell you the story of Kevin.
Kevin!
So, in one of our trips in Wailing Caverns, I don't remember which trip.
It was my first time in there, I think.
Then I think it was probably my first time too. We had just dropped down. We had crushed the turtle. We had cleared the short side, and we're starting on the long side. And it was first or second pack. We had a Druid of the Fang that somehow got away from the pack. I don't know if it was helped. Because
who would do such
someone
a thing?
in our group had been fearing things. and I don't know for certain that it was a fear. However, this mob wandered off.
Yep.
And from that point on, it was non-social. And it was always one full pack ahead of us. And this continued on until we got to the, not Kodo, but the Storm whatever.
Oh, it was past that.
Yeah.
to one of the
final
druid
boss.
bosses.
Yeah.
You can run a long way. In my trip there, I was on the short side, and we had one run all the way to the boss in the back.
Yeah.
It didn't pull that boss. It just continued running to the corner behind him.
Right. It just
Yeah,
it got stuck
Kevin.
in the corner behind it. Like, we named him Kevin.
It keeps you in combat, though.
Right.
Just keep you in
Yep.
combat.
And
Sucks.
for a while, we were wondering, was there just a GM screwing with us?
Well, because it was always just out of range. So, like, I could not even get a dot on him most of the time. We would get, like, just close enough and he would take off again.
Wow.
And, yeah, I mean, it was the craziest thing. And it just kept going and going and going. And, yeah, that's the story of Kevin. And now Grace purposely keeps trying to make new Kevins.
We had that happen to us in a whaling cavern. So I'm now curious. I don't remember this bug from vanilla. Was
I don't
this
either.
a vanilla bug, or
No.
is this something
I don't think so.
I think this is something new.
I had never encountered that, and if it did happen, it would have been social and would have gone and found friends. But Kevin just chilled. Like, nobody even noticed Kevin was running around.
Yeah, I mean, it was the craziest thing because we would go into a room and be like, oh my god, this is going to be a terrible pull. Look at all those guys. And then you'd look and go, oh no, one of them's Kevin. It'll be fine. He'll just run away.
It was, but again, like, we have the story of Kevin, which is not a thing that we would have in any other version of the game.
I'm really honestly glad that there are all new bugs to do all new weird things.
Well,
Yeah.
And
Well,
part of it too is, like, people keep saying, is it more difficult than other games? And on some level, yes, it is, but on the other level, it's just more random than other games.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the wrong question to ask. Because, like, is Dark Souls hard? I mean, in some places. But
Depends on how you're playing it.
yeah, like, what it is...
Definitely also the case for WoW.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Like, WoW is exactly the same. And, like, that's part of the reason that I've leveled up so quickly is I hit, like, my mid-20s and can solo elites my level.
Whereas I get 20 levels of pain followed by 10 levels of mild discomfort, and then I get to enjoy some of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a priest. I'm questing on things that are green because that's about my speed.
I'm a tank that is no longer like tanks that have come to be in, live, where, like, that's the thing is, like, so yeah, this is way more difficult than live is currently, because in live I can run around with impunity and just pull everything in sight and know
Tanks in live
I
are
will-
OP though.
right, like, well, I could do that as a DPS warrior. I could just pull entire camps and survive. And that's been a thing for a really long time. But this is a return. Like, I would say it's no more different than any other game from this era. Like, you can go back and play Dark Age Camelot, or not Dark Age Camelot, but like Lord of the Rings Online. And I still have to play Lord of the Rings Online like I play WoW, where I very carefully move through content.
Mhm.
So one other thing I will say that is my big takeaway is I have now played games that have promised me they are 10 to 100 times the size of WoW, and I've never played a game that has felt as big as WoW.
Yes.
WoW makes you march across the entire world for a long time.
Yeah.
Even when you have
It
fast
contributes-
travel, it's not that fast.
Yes. Even their fast travel takes you over this gigantic world and does not skip any parts of it.
Yeah. And
Sometimes it circles around it a couple times.
yes. But at the same time, there's a thing that I can do very frequently in my WoW play sessions that I can't do in other games, which is I can be, like, playing with half a mind. I'm, like, eating dinner while playing. I'm, doing my taxes or whatever. Like, it's not... There's a lot of downtime, which keeps the game from being exhausting.
Yep.
But it does have... It's like, but I can also opt into this is high intensity. Because I do want that. I just can't deal with it all the time. Because constant high intensity, I'll eventually screw up and die. And like, sure, it's like your DM making you make stealth checks. Yes, you're eventually going to fail one. You know, the DM can just force checks until somebody finally fails one. Like, oh, whatever. That's not interesting gameplay. But like, I don't have to worry about it so much. It's kind of nice. And it also means that I tend to play more than I otherwise would because I can do other things. Like I can hop on a flight and go change my laundry. I don't log out.
I mean, that's the one great thing about this experience is it leaves enough room between activities for conversations. Like, you know, I'm in a group right now, this moment, and I'm having conversations between pulls because the pulls are sporadic enough that, like, you can do that.
Yeah. Like, you can pay attention to guild chat because the game itself is not absorbing 100% of your mental capacity.
I pay way more attention to chat in general in this game. Like, and I remember being able to do this, and I just don't have the ability to do that in games like Final Fantasy XIV. I feel bad about it.
Well, and I guess that's part of it, too, is like all this time I was wondering how I apparently changed as a player between then and now. That clearly I was just like either so hyper focused or was just had different priorities in the game. But coming back to this, it's like, no, this game's exactly like I remember it. Like, I'm able to do all these things I used to be able to do. I assumed it was just I was misremembering or something like that, but no, the game's exactly like I remember it.
There's so many things that I remember being dumb and hating them, and they're still dumb, and part of me still hates them, but another part of me is viewing this through this nostalgic lens. So the things that used to be incredibly grating and miserable are now that, but also funny. And it makes the whole experience more enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, doing it. This reminds me of picking up 40K because I picked up 40K because, and you've heard me talk about it at this point a bunch, but I picked up 40K because I'm like, this game has nice minis but is kind of bad, and so I don't care about any of it. Mm-hmm. It's just, I don't care. I don't have to, I'm not invested. It's not a priority. And so that gave me a bunch of freedom to do whatever I wanted in a way that felt pretty good. And this is sort of the same thing. Like, WoW lost me a long time ago, and I did not realize exactly how long ago it was until I played this. But I like this version. This is the version that I liked. This is, in fact, the best time for me to be playing a rogue. Like, this was the time in the game I get to enjoy an entire game experience that was the best time to play my favorite class.
Well, like, from my side, also, it's really fun to play a warrior tank. Like, in modern WoW, threat has not been a mechanic that mattered for a very, very, very long time. If you are in a tanky stance, you basically just have mobs glued to you. Like, if you've touched them, you have mobs glued to you. Uh-huh. Now it's a thing. Like, dealing with rage sure and dealing with aggro and like taunt is a thing that you actually use now. It's not a button that you never touch. Or you only ever touch when, oops, I let one slip through the cracks. Like, it's a thing. I have to taunt. And it's getting easier as I get up there and level. But yeah, it's sometimes real dicey. I mean, there are times I can just roll along and AoE tank everything, and then there are other times where like we end up with like DPS on split targets, and it is a challenge for me to build enough threat on everything to hold it.
You know what helps with that?
Aggro.
What?
CC.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is also reminding me of how much I miss crowd control in dungeons.
I felt really bad about my first Wayland Caverns run, which involved 2 shaman, fire mage, and a priest healer. I did not know Mind Blast had a bonus aggro component.
It's got a huge bonus aggro component.
It does basically double aggro. Earthshock, I knew had a huge damage component. It's basically the Shaman Taunt.
Right. Well, and
So I
and
couldn't keep aggro on anything, and I was feeling really bad about it.
Well, in Wailing Caverns, we had a guildie running around with
Rockbiter weapon.
Rockbiter weapon on, and I had no clue that was basically Shaman defensive stance or aggro stance, not defensive, but yeah, like people are having to relearn what things do, and that's kind of interesting. I know as soon as I hit 60, I will respec, because I've kind of been building a spec that is good for leveling, but maybe not the optimal for when I actually start tanking real things.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really interested to see if this is a passing fad or more permanent. Because I think
Be interesting to see.
Because I think everybody who is watching it, like at a business level, is like passing fad. This is going to be it's going to be like a 1 month bump, and then people are going to leave after the first month.
Whereas, like, I kind of went into this trying to at least lay the groundwork for having a social structure that would maybe work going forward.
I mean,
like, our server has a very active server Discord, with, like, guild leadership channels and things like that I'm in.
Sure.
There's already as much infrastructure as we had several years into Argent Dawn.
I mean, I think also that there's probably a lot of people out there who are like me, which I may or may not be back to playing WoW full-time all the time like I did back in the day. But now, given the choice, when I come back to dabble in WoW, it will almost certainly be this and not the retail version.
Well, that's another thing I really like about this one, is this is a version of WoW that I feel like I can just play now and then once I'm, tired of playing all the time, and not feel like I'm forever falling behind.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of why I'm kind of interested to see what the, for lack of a better term, broader audience is doing and winds up doing, because if you... This asks a lot of weird questions of Blizzard very, very suddenly. Because there's I see about like 3 outcomes. Either this is a flash in the pan, people like it, they're like, this was cool. Once they're done with it, they go back to playing retail. The curve levels off, business as usual. Which is what I think Blizzard is hoping is going to happen. Like, all of their promo stuff for, like, get a classic character to 60 and we'll give you a free max level retail character.
Well, who cares?
It's almost like they're a little afraid it's not going to be that, and they're trying to put their thumb on the scales.
Right. And then there's the other 2 possibilities. There's, this becomes big, and, like, the current trend of it's hurting retail, like, it's hurting retail's player base because everybody's playing classic, continues, in which case, what do they start releasing expansions? Like, does that say to them, like, because the message, if that's the case, is really clear, like, somewhere along the way in the last 15 years, everything went wrong.
I mean, and I have my clear point where that happened, but it would probably be different for everyone.
Well, I've got really awkward bad news for you. Because the data exists. WoW's growth plateaued with Wrath.
Right, but it had been growing at a frightening rate before then. It's not like it could have kept up doing that forever.
Sure.
There's some stuff that happened, like, all in a sequence of events. Like, Activision bought Vivendi, which basically
that was pre-BC.
Well, it was 2008. 2010 is when the plateau happened. So it makes me wonder, was Cataclysm kind of a knee-jerk reaction to try and get growth happening again, to mix things up?
Yes.
So I'll be honest, from my perspective, I was not expecting to be this far. I kind of figured I would play a little bit, but like, MMOs lately haven't been able to get me to stay on for very long. I eventually find something better to do. I eventually lose interest and go off and do something else. I figured I would sort of slog my way through the levels and I would probably be this far 2 months in, not 2 weeks in. So something's up is kind of my point of view here.
Well, so the other thing is, like, again, for the longest time I doubted my memories of World of Warcraft. And like, I've had this really complicated relationship with the game for quite some time. And playing this has made me remember, oh yeah, no, I really did love this era of the game. It's not that there was nothing better for me to do back then. It's that I really did love the game back then. Like, this is really fun.
I think we fought rose-colored glasses so hard that we've, like, really amped up the bad times and forgotten about some of the good times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's this weird thing going on, and it may just be, like, Bloodsail Buccaneers, and it may just be Horde side, but across the board, people are pretty great. And it's like they all want to keep this thing going.
Yeah, the server has been good. And as I was discussing earlier this evening, like, I logged into a low-level alt in Brill, and there were 1 million people around in the inn RPing, and it wasn't getting weird. It was just, like, regular people RPing interesting stuff about being undead. What's happening? And so, like, I don't know. I mean, when I played before, I didn't play on RP servers very often, but that was one of the largest gatherings of people I've seen in one place, just chilling out by the fireplace, having a drink, talking. It was very cool.
I mean, that was the thing I hoped that we would see, because Vanilla WoW was the last time I was able to do that. BC killed it.
Well, and the other weird thing is, like, I assumed we would have, I don't know, a couple dozen people playing this. We have like 90 characters in the guild, and not all of them are alts. Like, the majority aren't alts. That's just surreal to me. And it's not like people are, like, what I thought would happen is people would log in for a couple nights, be like, oh yeah, this is what vanilla was like, and then disappear. But, you know, we have people that play in all sorts of frequencies. Like, there are people that play every day. There are people that play, like, on the weekend. There are people that play once or twice a week.
The game is pretty conducive to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because all of the stuff that frustrated me is still there. Like, playing with your friends. WoW is shockingly bad at letting you play with your friends.
Right. You've basically had to start alting to keep from running away from the rest of us.
Yeah. My alts are running away from people.
Right. I started playing a druid today because, like, I'm getting to that point where I'm pulling ahead of the majority of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't have to worry about that because A, I'm an altaholic and I will alt all the things all the time, and B, I'll be traveling a bunch, so I'm gonna fall behind no matter what I do. But it doesn't matter. Like,
But it's like, what behind is there to fall?
Right, and I don't even care, you know, if someone, as long as it's not someone max level dragging me through something. If someone's 5 or 8 levels above me running through a dungeon, that's fine. It's still interesting, and I'm still getting my quest done, and I'm still seeing the dungeon. And I've been doing the inverse. I've run a couple things for people when they were low level already, and that's one of my favorite things to do. And now there's tons of people around to help out with stuff like that. It's great.
And, like, we have a truly amazing group of people. Just the sheer amount of, I got this thing, can anyone use it? It's going on is, like, just phenomenal.
Which reminds me, I might have a wand for you, Grace.
Ooh, I'm excited.
I got my first blue BOE drop out in the world.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
And it's a wand, and I'm playing a hunter, so...
The one thing you can't use.
There's one more. Maces. Hunters can't use maces.
Yep.
Sort of on the thing I was thinking about, like, we have our own, we always tend to approach games from our own, you know, group. Try not to use the word paradigm, but you know what I mean. Like, we are not representative of the crowd as a whole.
Right.
And I'm really interested in what is the crowd as a whole going to do? Because, like,
Yeah.
if they all up and leave, then whatever, we'll continue doing our thing. That's fine. But, like, WoW undeniably changed the landscape of not just the MMO genre, but the entire games industry. Every single major game has MMO features now. And, like, at the same time, like, WoW had this massive effect on the games industry and then also killed the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have is there still an appetite for the genre? Is it possible for us to get other interesting games that are doing the things that WoW is doing, but better or thought out in a different way or something else? Or is it just, no, none of that matters. It's WoW or nothing. Because, like, I don't know. I know there are definitely people who are like, no, I actually am not going to play any other MMO that's not WoW ever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how good it is. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if it's, like, specifically themed to me. I would never play it. Versus, like, I would.
I mean, we're clearly not that audience.
Mm-hmm.
Considering how many different MMOs we have gotten ourselves to play.
Yeah. Well, but nobody's making them.
But
Right.
I know. And that's sort of like...
I mean,
feel
vanilla
like-
cost WoW to go from the, third largest MMO to back to the first?
Yeah. That's why I say, like, is this a refresher that, like, hey, actually, we abandoned this genre too early and we can adapt in different directions and there's a bunch of lessons that we forgot?
Hope.
Like,
That's what I'm hoping.
Is there going to be an MMO renaissance? Or is it just, hey, this is perfectly timed because WoW released an expansion that people didn't actually like much, and so while they bake the next one, which will hopefully be better, this will tide people over.
Even if it's better, I don't think I'm going to buy it.
Yeah,
I think BFA soured me that much.
Well, and that's the thing is, if BFA is so bad that it soured people, but it doesn't start an MMO renaissance because people aren't interested in games that aren't WoW, is that just is this the, like, death throes of the MMO genre?
Well,
Also-
I feel like on the WoW front, there's a lot of bad blood towards this expansion, and that's got to be fueling some of this because Legion was already the WoW renaissance. Like, that was probably the best expansion they had done since Wrath, and they didn't figure out what the special sauce was that made Legion much better, and went in what felt like the exact opposite direction with BFA. And I don't know if they can correct the course because I don't think they understood what they did wrong, just like they probably didn't understand at Cataclysm what they did wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, and for me, this is why I'm so on the soapbox of I want an MMO renaissance and I want other people who aren't Blizzard making MMOs, because I don't think that WoW has known what it was doing right for a long time, and I don't trust them to figure it out.
I think they would have to be extremely painfully honest with themselves about some things, and that's
Yeah.
really,
That's
really hard
never
to
going
do.
to happen.
Well, it's never gonna happen. Like this, they're famous for it not happening. In fact,
So the thing that WoW Classic has going for it that the other MMO company would need to figure out is how to get the network effect that WoW Classic has because of WoW's built-in cachet.
Well, and it's got to tap into something a little bit deeper also because, I mean, as I said before, one of the things that makes this so fun is kind of being able to have the nostalgia and laugh at it when it's being terrible and get over those parts. And those things are part of why it's a story engine, but those things also wouldn't work so well with a brand that I wasn't so familiar with and so nostalgic for. If it was a brand new IP, a brand new game, and it told me you have 8 slot bags and now you have to go collect the Green Hills of Stranglethorn, I would be out of there so fast.
well, and that's the thing. That's the thing that I wonder about. Like, That's why I asked the question, is it just WoW or nothing? Is it only WoW can get away with this and nobody else is allowed to?
It might be until you find something else that has 15 years of history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
And
like
something else has to get to a point where it has 15 years of history, which is rough.
The only thing that I think would have the gravitas to pull people in would be something like a modern rendition of EverQuest.
I disagree.
I disagree. I don't think EverQuest is anywhere near big enough.
No.
But I can't think of a property other than that would be able to do it.
Something Star Wars that was actually good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, is that a bunch of the things that you could do are fraught in their own ways
with licensing issues. Yeah,
I kind of think it would need to be an existing IP.
Star Wars Galaxies.
I mean, Disney's they brought back LucasArts. They're going to start making games.
So here's another piece of this puzzle that probably bears talking about is World of Warcraft, especially in this era, predates the poisoning of the wells with microtransactions.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a game. Like it's this one thing. You're not adding an additional revenue stream to it. You just have everything out of the box.
Interestingly, analysts pointed out that the $15 sub fee, which all classic players are paying in some way or another, some of them are paying functionally $20 because tokens, basically represents a larger revenue stream than most free-to-play games get, at least for the initial burst.
Well, but that's free-to-play MMOs were a reaction to WoW aggressively poisoning the well. Because the only way they could get people in the door is if they said you don't have to pay to play this game.
Right. Because
that's
most
a thing
people
WoW killed.
Most people won't pay for more than one subscription. Just simple as that. Or can't pay for more than one subscription.
I wonder if that's true nowadays, with Netflix and Hulu and a bunch of other streaming services.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a greater appetite for subscription. This is
what if Disney added a game subscription to its Disney Plus?
Things would get weird.
Yeah.
What if Netflix starts releasing MMOs?
I mean, so I think
tax them onto the service.
Because it's a thing I've been thinking about. I do think that there's a thing that WoW would have some trouble doing well that another MMO could do absolutely brilliantly that would be compelling. And that is launch a parallel mobile game that influences and interacts with the live game. Not like in a do your dailies, hit your button, but this is a full game that you could play totally independent of whether or not you're playing the live game and vice versa, but the two interact. And now
Still waiting for FF11 mobile.
The what?
Still waiting for FF11 mobile.
Yeah. But it would be you'd have a completely different game, but it would interact directly with it.
So kind of what Eve tried to do with Dust, whatever.
Yeah.
For decades, I've said they needed to take the trade skilling aspect of an MMO and make it into a mobile game.
Neverwinter did that. Sort of.
I mean, and I actually kind of liked that aspect, but then they got rid of it.
Yeah. But what if it was an entire game that worked? It wasn't some aspect of the game ported to mobile. It was a mobile game that was also this thing that you could do that affected the other game.
Well, so for example, if you took something similar to the mission system from Garrisons or whatever the flavor of the month has been, now it's the War Table, but you turned it into more of a Dragalia-like game where you actually have characters that you're building up in the mobile client and you're actually interactively going on missions with them, and the rewards you earn can then be assigned to your characters in the MMO.
Yeah. Or you can help out your favorite streamer by playing you play the mobile game, they're playing the live game, you can help them out directly.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a meaningful hook to me.
Not to you. But
apparently for a lot of people it probably would be.
Belle, if you could play a mobile game and it would help your character out, in a game you were playing,
that would
you
be
would do
meaningful
it.
to me.
You would do it hugely. And it's the same thing. It's just redirecting your efforts elsewhere. If you could play a mobile game and it would give you guild perks in your guild, you'd do it in a heartbeat.
Uh-huh.
Right, but I might
Absolutely.
resent that because if I didn't like the mobile game, I would feel forced to play it regardless.
Right. Which is why it would have to be delicately made. But
Well, it would have to be a good mobile game and not just a cheap extension.
right. Yeah, you'd have to actually make it good. And ideally, you make it multifaceted and so on. Anyway, I think somebody should make Shadowrun the MMO. Because that interaction would work absolutely perfectly
It
from
really
the word
would.
go. It would be 100% in keeping with the world and lore, and it would work great. IMO.
I do like the idea of a Shadowrun MMO, especially from this perspective. So, one other thing that I kind of was like, oh, this is different, is I am not the big special in this world.
Right.
This world recognizes other players exist, and I don't have to be the most important person in the room. I do some cool things.
Yes. And incidentally, this is exactly the point where Burning Crusade lost me.
Yes. Like, if I want to do really cool things, then I need to find... Like, if I want to do the big, epic stuff, I need a group of people.
Here's the problem I had with Burning Crusade in every WoW expansion to this point. In vanilla, the world exists for its own merit. It is a living, breathing world. In each expansion from that point on, there is some central conflict going on, and the world exists to tell the narrative of that conflict.
Yep.
Like, when we go to Northrend, we're only going to Northrend because there's a war going on. Like, everyone that you meet somehow fits into that narrative. It's not like the backside of Northrend has people that don't even know what's going on in the war, that just are trying to live peaceful lives. No, everyone is either on one side or the other and focused on the main set piece.
Or they're walrus people.
But even then, the walrus people were focused on what was going on in the main campaign. There's little vignettes every so often, because, like, I guess the fishing village in Pandaria could be termed as being something other than that, but, like, it feels like in an expansion,
like a world anymore.
Right? In an expansion, it feels like if you take the story arc out of it, there's nothing to support itself anymore. Whereas there are so many different competing conflicts going on in baseline Azeroth that feel like a world. Like, all of these individuals aren't necessarily on one team or the other. Like, they have their own motivations. They're doing their own thing. They're doing political machinations that may or may not weave into the broader story arc. But, like, each little patch that we had in Classic or Vanilla felt like it was its own thing, and it had support from certain areas of the world, but it wasn't the entire world now only cares about this one thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually a very fair point. I don't actually know that I could tell you what our motivation for going through the Dark Portal was.
It's open.
Yeah,
It opened and things were coming through it from Draenor.
But wait a second, because we never had to deal with stuff coming through it from Draenor. We, the players, never dealt with that.
Yeah, we did. There was
There was a
bit in the
precursor event.
There was a precursor event.
Okay.
Same as how with, leading into Lich King, there was the Scourge invasion as a precursor event.
Max, you mean?
There was an
Yes,
actual event.
Yeah, it was like Scourge things popping up in various zones and
Frostworms and Orgrimmar.
It was a repeat of the same event that happened before Nax opened, though, where the machines would show up in, like, Ajara or whatever, and there was...
Yeah.
Also the Scourge Plague.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Scourge Plague was, like, the unique thing that was happening, and that was fun.
If you say
Sadly, at this point, like, they've patched the way the engine works, and I don't think the Blood Plague would work in this version. I'm kind of hoping it does, though.
I mean, we'll find out.
I think if
people
it
are sure
does
gonna
or
try.
doesn't, I think if it does or doesn't will be a very telling how much are they paying attention.
Just let it out for the first week or so.
Yeah.
So one other thing that I know that Tam and I have been doing that reminds me of a point to make is we've been just looking at rogue specs and debating and theory crafting and trying to like figure out, okay, what's a good rogue spec? And one of the reasons this is possible is because rogue talent trees are not quote unquote well designed per what WoW would later consider a well designed talent tree. And so going and getting 31 point talents is often not really a worth it endeavor. There are better ways to build a rogue spec. And this means there's a lot of different options for rogue specs and a lot of different questions to answer. And it's not necessarily clear. And I can definitely see where they would say, well, this is bad. Players will not know what the right spec is. But at the same time, it gives me this outside thing where it's like, all right, let's figure out what's good for me. And I am super excited to not feel like I have a pigeonholed spec I'm supposed to go down.
While I like min-maxing a lot, I don't exactly like the days that talent trees were just traps that you have to be clever enough to not fall into.
Yes. Like, the trade-off is that they're traps for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, because I had friends that had arguably horrible specs that were just not functional and that they had trouble leveling with because they kind of put points everywhere. I like, on one level, I like it. On the other level, it's a system like this would almost feel better if you had a would you like me to put your talent points in for you, or do you know what you're doing kind of system. To where like if you really don't know how to spec, it's just going to give you what is probably the 90%er spec. Like, this is probably going to be good for whatever you want to do. Whereas it's kind of like in Diablo, where by default you can only have one ability out of each of the trees in Diablo, but if you know what you're doing, you can ignore that and turn that off and make more optimal builds as a result. I like that you can solve problems with talents that in this version of the game that don't exist now, where you just have one of three choices.
But at the same time, it punishes inexperienced players pretty severely.
And the gold punishment is probably what makes it feel bad. Mm-hmm. Because like respecing gets really expensive really fast. Like, your first respec is a gold. It's just now getting to the point where I could afford to do respec. But that keeps growing, and I don't know if this version of the client has the cap on how big it can grow.
I thought it capped at 30.
I don't think that.
Cap's at 50.
Cap was higher than 30 when I started playing, and they only made respecing easier after that.
Did it have diminishing returns where it reduced if you didn't do it, or is that a later edition?
Also later.
Okay.
Like, if it was always a gold, then that wouldn't be that big of a deal. But yeah, I mean, like, with it increasing up to 50 gold is going to be a lot of gold for a lot of people for a very, very long time. I mean, that's what your level 40 mount costs.
Nope.
Wait, it's not 50?
That's what the skill costs, right?
The skill is 20.
Oh.
The mount is 80.
Okay, so it's 100. For some reason, I was thinking it was 50 gold.
Nope.
It would be 60 later. And they also made the training the expensive part, so you could have more than one mount reasonably. Semi-reasonably.
Okay. Well, at this point, I think we've gone over by a long shot, and I kind of assumed we would, but we will probably talk a lot more about this next week. Any final short closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
I hope this changes something.
I also hope this changes something. I hope this makes viable a new group of classic feeling MMOs that do different things.
I want to go down the path we didn't go down before.
Yeah.
I don't want classic. I want modern, but I want the other path.
Take a mulligan. A 15-year mulligan.
that after Wrath, things changed and went down a different path. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and this is definitely one of those situations where we would be interested to hear your thoughts. We will probably be talking at length about it again next week, so we will see you then. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.
Good night.